What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of World of Tanks Blitz, where today we're going to be analyzing which is the best tier 10 heavy tank, and we're only going to take a look at all of the auto-reloading slash auto-loading tier 10 heavy tanks. Let's get straight into it. The first tank we're going to take a look at today is going to be the Kranvagn. This is the tier 10 European slash Swedish heavy auto-reloading tank, and it features the best armor out of all the three tanks we're taking a look at today. This tank has got a turret which is, at least frontally, pretty much impenetrable. If you use your gun depression, then the armor gets even more effective because people are going to shoot up at your angled turret, and thus increasing the effectiveness of your armor pretty much into oblivion. So enemies are generally not going to be able to pen your turret unless they are super high pen TDs, like maybe a Jagdpanzer or a 268 loading heat, or maybe even a Hori. So you have to watch out against those heavy tanks, especially if they manage to shoot down onto your turret. Then of course the effectiveness is even worse. But generally speaking, this tank has got really strong turret armor. So armor wise, this tank is definitely the best of all the three. However, let's have a look at the gun. This gun is not an auto-loading gun, it's an auto-reloading gun, which means that you are reloading in between each of your shots. And it's got 3.5 seconds of intra-clip reload, which is the worst out of all the three. Remember, the T57 has got 2.5, the MX50B has got 3, and this tank's got 3.5. So this, again, it may not sound that important, however, it really is, because the intra-clip reload speed is basically an indicator of how effective your tank is at doing damage, because if you can pump out your shells faster, obviously you're going to do more damage in a shorter amount of time. Also, if you manage to track your opponents, well, if they have more time to realize that they are being tracked by an autoloader, then they are going to be able to escape far more easily. And this is just really making it harder for you to like perma-track enemies and then do like 1,200. Also, the DPM on this tank is just super bad. This tank has not even got 2k DPM, it's at 1980 something. So, I mean, you are not going to do much damage quickly. I mean, the strength in this tank is that you're able to hold flanks. Since you've got such a good turret, you can see I'm angling my turret, like my gun a little upwards to make the cupolas harder to hit. There's also a little trick in playing this tank. I mean, this tank is good at holding. It's like a mouse. It's good at holding a flank. It doesn't do damage quickly, but it does it consistently. Also, you've got the consumables, which give you better accuracy and better speed. So if you are reloaded, then this tank can be pretty effective, don't get me wrong. However, if you get into a situation where you are being bullied, where enemies are pushing you, then it just gets really hairy, because you're not going to be able to get out of that situation, because like you don't have the DPM to really shoot your way through. So there are going to be situations where you're just going to be hopelessly lost in this tank because you simply don't have the firepower to get out of the situation. Also, the mobility, which lies at 30 kph, is the worst out of all the three tanks we're taking a look at today. Now, this is a situation where I am getting pushed. You can see I have been in the middle, I had support from my heavies, and I got pushed. This is exactly the situation you do not want to be in your Kranvagn. I mean, you're going to see in just a few seconds, they are going to push me, and I'm not going to be able to do anything because I just don't have the firepower, and there's just not much you can do. Anyways, the mobility of this tank lies at 30 kph, which means it is the slowest out of all the three tanks we're taking a look at today. However, it does have good armor, but the gun is, in my opinion, clearly the worst, because you do not just reload for, let's say, 19 seconds or 18.5 and then pump out 1,200 damage in a short amount of time. No, you reload for like pretty much half a minute to then do 1,200, and if you get lucky, because you got the worst gun handling, and you also got the worst intra clip. So this tank is just not good at doing damage. And also, if you're in a situation like this, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do. Now, the second tank we're looking at today is the T57. This is the tier 10 American, this time auto-loading heavy tank. It is very well known, and it's got, well, 19 seconds of reload for the entire clip, 2.5 seconds intra-clip, which gives it the shortest intra-clip reload on all of the tier 10 auto-loading or auto-reloading tanks, and 400 alpha, as well as good AP pen, good heat pen. Especially if you use calibrated shells, then you are not going to be having any problems to go through your opponent's armor. 2.5k HP, that is also fine. The armor is just nothing to really write home about. It does have some trollish armor, but you just shouldn't rely on the armor. On this tank, you are not going to be getting many bounces off. You're only going to be able to bounce shells if you get really lucky, so you shouldn't be relying on that. Also, since the armor is so weak, I've said it already, this tank does get pen in its side by HE rounds. Now what you can see me do here is something which is, I think, pretty important in this tank. Yes, I've just taken 2 shells. However, I mean, I shouldn't have taken the second one, but taking 1 shell for firing 3 shells is always a good trade. This tank is pretty good at trading because you take 1 shot of damage of, like, say, like 400, and then you can give them 1,200 back in just 5 seconds. Also, since you got that good intra-clip reload, you can really just go for track shots. So that is also another positive aspect about this gun. Also, you have insane heat pen. So if you load heat with the calibrated shells that you definitely should be using on this tank, you are just going to butter through everything. Also, I mean, mobility-wise, this tank is the second best. It's got better mobility than the Kranwagen, however, worse mobility than the 50B. But the gun is the best out of all of 3 of these tanks, because you are simply able to do a lot of damage in a pretty short amount of time, and then you reload for 19 seconds. You just try and get safe and put yourself in a good position to then peek out and just, you know, unleash hell on your opponents. Also, the grind towards it is pretty enjoyable, I'd say. The tier 9 tank, the T-5041, is also really, really strong. The tier 8 tank, the T-69, isn't that good. It's like more mediocre. However, I mean, it's only tier 8 tank. You don't suffer your way through to the tier 9, but you definitely don't enjoy your way to the tier 9. Once you get the tier 9, life is really enjoyable because the tier 9 is really good, and it teaches you the playstyle of the T-57, and then the T-57 is just really, well, the simple man's dream, I'd say, of the best tier 10 auto reloader. Let's go straight on to the next tank. And the last tank on the list today is the AMX 50B. This is the tier 10 French, again, auto-loading heavy tank. It's got similar, as you can see, similar clip reload speed to the T-57. However, it has got 3 seconds intra-clip, which is half a second more than the T-57. And now, you might be thinking, well, that is not much. I mean, why should the AMX 50B be worse than the T-57? I mean, it's only half a second. Well, half a second does make a pretty big difference, because that is half a second more your opponent has to react and to maybe repair their tracks or get out of your way. So the T-57 just does its damage quicker than the AMX 50B. However, of course, the 50B must be somewhat balanced, and the balancing measures, I guess you could say, Wargaming took, or well, which lie in the game design, on the tank design, is the mobility. This tank has got a pretty strong engine, and it's got a top speed of 50 kph, which you are going to be reaching fairly often. So the mobility is the best out of all the 3 tier 10 auto reloading / auto loading heavy tanks. Also, pen wise, this tank has got good pen. I am again using calibrated shells because that is, I think, what you should do on every tier 10 auto loading or auto reloading tank, no matter if it's a heavy or a medium or whatever. Always go for calibrated shells because you are not firing that often, and if you fire, you will just want to increase your chances of penning. So go for that more pen. It is worth it, especially if you've got any struggles in terms of penning. You just load the gold, and then you are pretty certain of going through. Also, good aim time, good accuracy. As you can see here, I managed to put 2 shells into the Kran, and he's getting pretty mad. So this tank is just really enjoyable to play. Now, armor-wise, this tank is, I would say, the worst. I mean, yes, the armor is trollish, again, same as on the T-57. I mean, the frontal hull armor is better than on the T-57. However, the turret armor, sorry, it is just much worse. The turret is pretty big. Everything's going to pen you unless you get really lucky and they just hit the top of your, like, cupolas, and sometimes you are going to get lucky bounces, but you really can't rely on your armor at all in this tank. If you get shot at, generally it pens. Also, you've got huge tracks, so enemies are going to track you often. Your side armor is weak, your rear armor is weak. Same goes for the turret. I mean, enemy TDs are going to be able to pen the sides of your turret with HE, the back of your turret with HE. Basically, you are just one driving HE pool of hit points, which enemies are going to be willing to profit from. So definitely do not be exposed too much, or if you are exposed, use the advantage of the autoloader you have. This autoloader, again, does 1,200 with its clip, so even if you take 1 shot, you are still going to have positive trades, which is about a positive 700 damage trade, I'll say, roundabout. So, pros about this tank. The gun is good mobility, good pen, good accuracy. However, 3 seconds intra clip, which makes it the second best gun of the auto reloading / auto loading heavy tanks on tier 10, and it's got the best mobility. Now, we've taken a look at all 3 of the tier 10 auto reloading / auto loading heavy tanks, and it is time to come to a conclusion of which is the best. In my opinion, the Kranvagn clearly stands on the third place. This tank, it has got the worst mobility. It also has got the worst gun, in my opinion. It has got pretty bad DPM. There are going to be situations where you are just going to be hopelessly lost and you're not going to be able to do much because you just don't have the firepower. Yes, there are going to be situations where you can stand in the back, where you've got time to reload your shells and do consistent damage and also bounce shells because you're hull down, but those battles are not going to be the norm when playing this tank. So this tank is definitely in the third spot. The only thing it's got going for it is its armor. The second spot is going, or the second place on the podium, if you will, is going to the AMX 50B. This tank features the best mobility out of all three of these tanks. It also features a pretty good gun, which is not bad by any means. However, it is still a little worse than compared to the T-57's gun, because the T-57 just puts out its damage, first of all, more, I mean, not consistently, but like you've got less intra-clip reload in the like when playing the T-57, so the T-57 is more effective in terms of being an autoloader. Also, this tank gets penned way easier because it's got the worst armor out of all the three, and it's got pretty weak side armor and turret armor. Now, that doesn't make this tank bad. You still have good mobility and you can still cruise around the map like I did it in the battle you've seen. However, this is like generally not happening. Like, you're not going to get as many good games in a 50B as you're going to get them in a T-57, at least in my opinion. And this is also leading us to the first spot on the podium, the T-57 Heavy. It features, in my opinion, the second best armor, obviously the worst mobility, no, the second best mobility. I mean, the worst mobility is the Kranvagn, and it has the best gun. I mean, the gun is really, really nice on this tank. You've got low aim time, good accuracy, good pen, good intra-clip reload, good clip reload, and also you don't have the disadvantage of having that terrible DPM. Also, you can shoot your way through, because you can do 1,200 damage in just 24 seconds, so you can really do a lot of damage in a short amount of time. And this tank is just more brutal because it's just got more of a fear factor than a Kranvagn. I mean, enemies know the Kranvagn is just not going to do as much damage in a short amount of time as is the T-57. Enemies are less likely to peek against you because they know that they are going to take that 1,200 damage, compared to a Kranvagn where they're like, well, I'm going to take 400 and then I'm going to have 3.5 seconds to get away, which is more than enough. The T-57 doesn't allow for that. And that trollish armor compared with the good intra-clip reload just put this tank on the first spot, in my opinion. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to like, share, and subscribe to motivate me to make even more YouTube videos for you. If you like the content, feel free to leave some feedback in the comments. I'll be reading through each and every comment just as usual. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more. Snake out.